What is up? It's your boy Johnny Street Vive, BB Promos, and Tell Like It Is. Welcome back to the episode of Train With Me. I'm naked.
Hey, yo!
Anyway guys, today we're going to go over some common back training mistakes. And I'm going to go over those mistakes in 3 different types of lifts. So when we're talking about how to hit the back, we're looking at like vertical pull, a horizontal pull, and then some type of a pull from a hinge position. And I see these mistakes happen all the time. They happen with my athletes. I call them all my athletes clients, but they happen with my clients and athletes. And I see them happen in the gym all the time. So you know what? I got to do another video on some back training mistakes. So guys, without further ado, keep your eyes glued to the screen, your ears glued to the speakers, and let's learn some Hey, what's up guys? A lot of you guys are watching the channel, but you're not subscribed, so do your boy a favor and subscribe to the channel. Also hit that post notification button as well too, so next time I put a video, you'll be the first ones to get it. Hopefully by now you guys like the show, so if you do, hit the like button. Back to the show. Okay, so starting off with the vertical pull, or anything basically coming from this way and down. And for the most part, I've done a bunch of videos on pull-ups, so we're gonna talk, pull downs, high row, etc. So a couple things we want to take into consideration when we're setting up. And most of the time people make mistakes, it's basically in the setup. We just get in this thing here, and believe it or not, I see people just kind of sit in, they kind of lock this thing down, and then that's it. This is here for a reason. And there's a lot you can do with this pad here being on. It's not just to, keep you in here, it's to help you create leverage, right? So if you look at this right now, if I pull this thing off and go backwards, I'm gonna fall backwards, obviously, right? I'm definitely gonna fall backwards. But if I put it on, my legs are here, I can definitely fall back and still kind of fall backwards. But if I wanna keep myself in, I gotta engage my core. But if I wanna be stronger, if I push into my toes, I'm a lot stronger from here. If I let them go, I'm falling backwards, right? So you don't have to try that out in the gym, but just to give you guys some more clarity, if you want to create more leverage, stability from here, you want to be rock solid, planted in this seat, and you want to feel your butt coming off here, make sure this pad is on the thigh, and then you're going to press into it. You're going to press in like this. Now, if I press into it like this, you guys watch, if I press in here, I can literally come all the way back here and all the way up. No, that's not gonna help you with anything. I'm just letting you guys understand that now I am locked into my seat. So the next mistake that happens is, now that we're kind of locked in here, is we have this extreme amount of hyperextension, right? And for the most part, I think that happens because, number one, sometimes we're set up way too close. So when we pull this thing down, we're doing this. Maybe that's the reason, maybe not, I don't know. But what we wanna do is we wanna avoid doing this. Part of the reason why I know people do this is very clear to me, maybe not to you, but to me, is very clear that this isn't engaged. Because if I want to keep myself up, my core, my abs, they create spinal flexion. They do this. And then my erectors and everything else help with spinal extension. Right? So I'm doing this and this. I want to make sure that my core is engaged so I keep myself upright and sturdy from here, almost like a neutral spine. Just so you guys can get an understanding right now, if I flex my core, right now you can't see anything. Right now I'm going to flex my core. Can you see? Did my lower back do something? I'm going to do it again. Can you see this part get tight? If I tight my core like I'm from sitting on the toilet and I'm like, man, I gotta get this piece of doo-doo out of here and it can't get out. And I'm just like, right? And I'm pushing it out. And I'm not saying strain and get yourself some hemorrhoids. I'm saying just strain. I'm saying tighten your core. If you see how I tighten my core, my erectors get tight too. I've done this before a few times. If you guys take a hand like this, a hand like this on your back, and say push, pull. Say push, pull together now. And emphasize the P. Push, pull. You'll feel your core get tight as well as your lower back get tight as well too. What that creates is a really good, we used to call them football power columns. It keeps everything nice and stable. So from here, when I'm pulling, I keep myself upright. So when I'm when I'm pulling, everything stays straight. It stops it from doing this. Now, reason why I want to keep myself more upright is simply my range of motion. If you're trying to really just work on the teres and really, work that vertical pull, then we want to be upright. And we want to get our teres to reach still while we're retracted, right? And that's one of the mistakes people make too, that they retract, but that's fine. We've talked about it before. We'll talk more about keeping your shoulders down. But when we're in this position here, if I rock back like this, I'm shortening the range of motion. So if I do this, I shorten the range of motion because I want this to come from here as high as it can all the way down. So if you look at me from here, my core is engaged, or I am tight here. Engaging the core means tightening it, not sucking it in, not doing a vacuum. You're pushing into it. If you see from here, the range of motion is very great from here all the way up. If I do this, my range of motion gets changed, right? Now, if we're doing a high row, there's nothing wrong with leaning back, but we don't want to be hyperextended back. There's a difference between doing this or this. So here's an example. I'm pushing my feet into the pads and I'm like this and I'm straight. Well, if I'm doing a high row, and I've done this before on a Nautilus machine, I want my lats to wrap around almost like wrap around my shoulders, and then my scaps to retract and pull back. This is a neutral spine. This isn't. And we have a ton of pressure on lower back here, and like, oh man, my back hurts, and I was just sitting down doing high rows, which shouldn't happen. So we want to be engaged. So whether we're doing a high pull, our core is engaged here, or if we're doing a high row and we're leaned back a bit, we're still engaged from here. We don't want this. We want this. So we're pulling from here or pulling from here.
Hey, what's good, people? Struggling to keep up with your routine, or you feel like you're just spinning the wheels? Well, you came to the right place. Check out the link in the description below for my customized one-time training or nutrition plans. I'm also offering online coaching with weekly check-ins and unlimited contact with myself. And look, if you don't want to dive in right away and you have some questions, book yourself a video call with myself. And at the end of the consult, I deduct off any package that you pick. Anyway, guys, let's get back to the show.
We have the good old horizontal row. Chest support. So for you guys who are doing, most time I see people doing chest supported rows or chest supported dumbbell rows. One thing is setting up. And the common mistake is made is this is either set too high, and then we have this thing sitting on our stomach. And then it's like, oh, and you're like, oh, and you're pulling, you can hardly breathe. So we want to make sure that this pad here sits somewhere like mid-chest. So it's not sitting on your core, right? You want to be sitting on your core and putting all the pressure here when you're pulling, and you're like, oh, my stomach, that hurts, it sucks. I want to lower this to where my chest is sitting here. So now this part of my chest is on the pad, right? And we're planted on the ground and we're here. Now again, we also don't want, depending on where you put your feet, you can put your feet here, wherever your feet pads are, we want to make sure that we are planted on those feet pads. We're engaged and locked in from here. We don't want lazy feet and then pulling. So locking your feet from here, but then again, we also don't want, when you're pulling, this extreme amount of hyperextension. This is what we don't want. And it happens a lot. This thing gets overloaded and we get this. Like you're literally sitting in a freaking, what do you call those things? Boats? Boats? What's a boat called? What's a kayak? You're in a kayak, just row your boat. Like, we don't want this. What we want to do is pretend we're pulling ourselves into this thing. I always make the analogy when we're pressing to pretend that you're not really pushing the weight off your chest, that you're pushing yourself into the floor. Same thing for this. We want to feel as if we're pulling ourselves into this. And it's fine that we have a little bit of T-spine extension. And T-spine extension, if you guys want to know, like C-spine is like your cervical spine is like your neck. T-spine is like, think about your traps. I think your L-spine is your lumbar, right? So it's okay to have a little bit of T-spine extension because when you retract your scapula, it's naturally gonna happen. I don't wanna go from here to here. I wanna go from here to here. There's a difference between this and this. You see how much everything gets bunched up down here. I'm not trying to bunch this thing up. I don't wanna compress my lower spine. I want to keep it neutral and still long from here. So when I'm pulling into the bench, and you can see my lower back gets tight, doesn't get bunched. It gets tight all the way through. I let it protract, and then I'm pulling myself into this pad. So from here, I want to be, it's fine to protract a bit. My core is engaged. If you look right here, my core is still engaged. So use this pad as a reference, almost like a belt, that when you tighten your core, you can feel. If you look at me right now, I'm holding one hand. If I tighten my core, look what happens to this. Just by doing this. And I'm not pulling, I'm just tightening my core, I'm pulling. And that creates tension here and stability in my lower back. So when I'm pulling, it comes to here and through. Now, third mistake, lifting with intention. What I mean is, what are you trying to target? So depending on where you put your seat, and you say everything where it needs to be, your feet are good, you're engaged, create leverage, your core is tight, you're on the pad, everything's good here, and you're trying to work your lower lats, and you pulling from here, and you can see how high I am, right? We get a lot of pulling for traps. Right now I'm getting a crazy great trap workout from here, being from protracted to retracted, but everything stays high. If I want to work those lats, I want to creep those hands lower so they're here. You can see the difference between this or this. So I want to pull from here to get the lower lat to work, or it's going to work regardless, but if I'm targeting my lats, I want to make sure when I'm pulling, I'm pushing down on my arm here and pulling through to here and still pulling my elbow down on the floor, and my lats feel super tight. So I'm here and I'm pulling down and my lats are engaged, and pull. Don't pull so high and say I'm working my lats, and then we're actually working rhomboids, rear delts, and traps. Lats is down low here. So from the ground up, let's be stable wherever your feet pads are, pushing this strong from the ground, engaging the core, so engaging the legs, engaging the core, pushing into here, grabbing low enough that when you pull back, we have this like 90-degree angle here. We don't want to be up here, because if we are, everything shifts up. We want everything to shift down. So think when you're pulling that we're always pulling this down while we're pulling to get the lats to really come out. Last but not least, we're gonna work a bent over row. And number one, it's setup, obviously. And I see this happen all the time when it comes to setup. Start to understand and know where your natural hip alignment positioning is. I've done this a gazillion times, spin around, do a circle, jump in the air. You gotta spin around the circle. The reason why I say spin around the circle is so it keeps you honest. Right, so you're not thinking about it. So you're like, why am I spinning around the circle for? And you jump in the air and you're like, oh shit, that's why I'm doing it. But literally, if you just naturally jump in the air, you get your foot positioning as soon as you land. It's pretty much a very natural position for your hips. A lot of times I see people doing either they're doing dumbbell bent over rows or barbell bent over rows, and they got this really wide stance. And they're like this. And maybe that might feel good to you, but it's getting you off. It doesn't help you at all when it comes to naturally hinging. Unless you're doing like a sumo deadlift, right? You want to get yourself in a place where your hips are naturally aligned. So when you do hinge back, it's natural for you to hinge back. So try to avoid being super wide. You don't have to be so wide like this. Keep yourself, I call it, in your cylinder, or like athletic position. Now, second mistake that's made is number one, know your range of motion. Or I would say, know your mobility, where you're restricted and where you're not. And for the most part, it's completely fine. You might only be able to go this low. That's fine. you'll eventually be able to go lower and lower, right? But the problem is when people sometimes try to go too low, they get to here because they can't handle it, because their back isn't strong enough or mobile enough. So we have a lot of this, or we get the opposite when we try to compensate so much, we just get this. And we get this weird thing like this, where we're just doing this instead. So remember, your setup is going to be just like doing a Romanian deadlift. So we have our feet a little outside shoulder width apart. We got a nice shoulders back away from the ears. Whether you're holding it supinated or pronated, we want to push your butt back, like you're doing a bent over, like you're doing an RDO, pushing it back. And if that's how far you can go, and I let my arms kind of move, then cool. Then that's as far as you're gonna go, right? We're gonna base your mobility on keeping your knees semi-locked out and straight. What I mean by semi means semi is like a little bit of bend. I don't mean like this, and you're locking knees out and you're just gonna snap your knees back, but a nice athletic position where I can still bend and sitting down the gross toilet in the back, like that gross toilet behind me, imaginary, and I'm doing this. If that's as far as you can go, that's fine. We don't want to do this. And this is what happens. Because your mobility isn't that good, we compensate by pushing the knees forward, and then we're kind of doing this. And there's literally no tension here at all. This is useless. So keep your knees straight, RDL position, go back, nice straight back until that's as far as you can go. Then that's how far you'll go. Eventually, when you work on your mobility, you'll be able to get lower and lower and lower and lower. But if your mobility isn't there, what happens is we do this, or we try to go low and we do this. And that's not what we want whatsoever. To emphasize again how important it is to keep your core engaged while you're in a hinged position. And what I like to kind of do is when I'm going back into my positioning, when I'm hinging, I like to literally blow out when I'm going back. When I go back, I go like this, because it keeps things tight here. From here, I'm tight. So I'm doing this. And if you watch my lower back, you see I'm tight from here. If I go, my lower back is tight. Now it's not. See the difference between not tight, tight. Not tight, tight. And that's going to keep your back in position that you're not going to injure your back down the road. Again, if you're sitting in a hinged position and your core is not engaged, you're asking your spine to just sit there and just do this. And all the nerves around it, then eventually you just get hurt, right? When you engage your core, these little power columns, this muscle here, if you see me flex it here, right? These muscles here basically lock they kind of like keep your spine safe, right? Muscles are around the bones. Muscles are moving bones. They're protecting bones. When I played football, muscle was literally extra armor. It helped you out. You got a bruise, great. You're skinny, you got a broken arm. Either way, we want to engage your core so when we're back here like this, that our core stays engaged and our back doesn't end up bending. So we want to be in that position where we're here and then locked in. So from here, here's me not engaging my core. Here's me engaging my core. Not here. And for those of you who might look like me from the waist down, meaning if you got one of those donkey butts that just naturally do this, you got a little bit of lower lordosis, we want to engage the core because that's going to pull the pelvis up a little bit and keep yourself neutral instead of your butt being back like this, and then our core not engaged, and we do this, then we have these two forces. We have a force from here pulling here and a force on the ground, and then it's just compressing your spine when you're like this. We don't want to be like this. We want to be like this. Not like this, like this. So just pretend that if you got a buddy that's going to come over and uppercut you in the stomach all the time, and you're just sitting there braced. You're braced, ready at all times for your boy to come by and punch you in the stomach. Boy, girl, I don't know, who cares? Just make sure you engage your core so you can keep your back nice and straight. So when you pull, you look like this, and not like this, and not like this, and not like this, and not like, I don't know. just engage your core. Anyway, guys, that is it. Try to avoid those mistakes and try those tips. Let me know if you guys have been connecting with those tips that I've given you. Let me know if you guys have connected with the tips that I've given you in the comment section below. If you want to see me break down more exercises specifically and really dive into technique and muscle activation and be able to give you guys the most amount of stabilization and control, let me know in the comment section below. Anyway, guys, until next time, you know how it is. Iron sharpens iron. Progressive overload your life. In the meantime, keep dream chasing. Peace.